Slow down, lay your burden down. Slow down.
Hey, welcome to Divergent Paths. I'm the host, Dan Dunford, and thank you for tuning in, I guess, today. I suppose tuning in is more of a radio thing, and I certainly do hate it when people call podcasts radio, but thanks for tuning in. After all that, this is coming out about a day later. I was out of town, upstate, and completely distracted by the Olympics. So, this is coming about 24 hours later than it usually does, but nonetheless, I believe you will enjoy it. And as such, because the podcast is coming 24 hours late, so will my the video that accompanies said podcast will be on Wednesday instead of Tuesday, which it has been the past couple weeks. I might switch that to Wednesday anyway. Just kind of space things out a little bit. This week's video will be with Aaron Paul and Jen Hinkle of Clappy Brass, who, of course, are two of my very good friends here in the city, and as always, are hilarious. And, we might have been a little drunk on this one. I don't know. You'll have to see. Anyway, if you're not watching the Olympics, shame on you as an American, unless you're not American, in which case, shame on you for not watching whatever country you're from. Sports is obviously the most important thing in the world, so, anyway, moving on. Things are going well with the YouTube channel, and so if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel yet, go to YouTube, search Divergent Paths, or follow the links from my Facebook page. Things are looking up. I'll probably be embedding a bunch of this stuff on my website pretty soon, so you'll be able to hit that up there maybe the next week or so. Also, if you enjoy the podcasts and the videos, please, if you can, throw a few dollars my way. Go to patreon.com/divergentpathspod, and it's much like those PBS telethons from your childhood. You can pledge $1 or $2 a month, and anyway, so this week's guest is Whitney George, who I have kind of been around obliquely for most of my time in New York. I've only done something with her once, but that was several years ago, and I never really met her. I was very happy to get the chance to chat with her. She's a really interesting person. She's a conductor and a composer, especially, and her conducting is kind of specializes in more experimental and new music things, which is a little bit rare to have someone who really specializes in that kind of stuff. But she's a really fun person to talk to. We had a good time. So I hope you enjoy my talk with her. If you want to see some more of her stuff, check her out on Facebook. Facebook.com/Whitney E. George for her page, or WhitneyGeorge.com. You can also check out one of her main ensembles that she works with and directs, the Curiosity Cabinet. You can find them at Facebook.com/The Curiosity Cabinet. Also, their website is the-curiosity-cabinet.com. So if you want to check them out as well, give it a look. Enjoy the podcast. If you like it, please leave a review on iTunes or on Stitcher, and look at that Patreon account, patreon.com/divergentpathspod, and I will talk to you next week.
Slow down.
I get it. I get it. Like, I love spinny chairs, but
I don't think anyone will be coming into the office, but
if someone does, that's
all right.
not a big deal.
Okay.
That's cool. Everything is awesome.
Okay.
Like,
Everything is awesome.
exactly.
Everything is cool when you're part of a team.
So, how's it going?
It's good. It's
Yeah?
good. I just got done teaching my summer course for today. We talked about the rise and decline of the orchestra, which is always a happy subject.
I talk about that a lot, particularly the decline part, and I don't know whether it's just because, like, orchestras don't hire me, or if it's because they actually are, but that's neither here nor there.
But
My inability to make money is not important. I'd rather just do this thing that doesn't pay anything.
Are you talking about composition? Because that's not.
I'm talking about podcasting
No, I hear you.
But also composition.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. We have the same problem. I assure you. Yeah, but I almost creeped them out with Pierrot Lunaire. I almost got there, but we only got to the late Romantic era today, unfortunately. It's all right. There's time to get weird with them with some Sprechstimme on Monday. Yeah.
So, you do a lot of things.
Yes.
A number, like, and this is not, I'm not just talking about you do a lot of things when you're teaching. I'm talking about, like, just in general as part of how you, well, we all kind of have to cobble together our careers as best we can, if we're kind of making snarky comments about orchestra, but I mean that's an issue for me. But as if you're a composer, if you're a composer, the even in the heyday of what if there was a heyday of being a composer, it wasn't as the path is a little more rocky. No matter what era we're talking about, if we're talking about like 1750 or 2050,
Sure.
I meant to say I was going to say 1950, and I started with 2000, and it just went off the rails. But no matter what time period we're talking about, we're like so. In addition to like composing, you run ensembles and you conduct, and you generally are. Like a bad penny.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you just keep turning up, doing stuff.
You.
That's in the.
I like that. I'll quote you on that. I like that quite a bit.
But you should definitely use that as a pull quote for the press section on your website.
Yes.
Whitney is like a bad penny, because like even though like I mean, like I said, I worked very like in like 3 times. Was in an ensemble that you were conducting, but that's the only time I've ever done something with you. But even having never really talked to you, I've seen your name like literally dozens of times.
Wonderful.
Like doing different things, whether it's with friends of mine, with not friends of mine, people who are just like, oh, do you know Whitney? I'm like, I mean, I know who she is.
Right.
Like, I mean, let's be honest. If someone sees you once, you're not a person that they would forget.
Well, thank you.
It's not because you're interesting. It's just because of the tattoos.
Thank you. Exactly.
Yeah. Just to be clear.
Yeah, of course.
If I'm being too snarky, just like just yell at me. It's cool.
You have an
All right.
appropriate.
Okay.
You could up the snark if you want to.
That's fine.
I'm game for snark.
It's just you got to be careful with people you don't know,
of
and
course.
people can get super touchy in New York music.
How
but,
dare they?
Right. Especially new. Well, anyway.
Yep.
So all of this to say, you do a number of things, and I guess we could get into why that is in a minute. But how is it that you kind of like began, your journey, if you will, into like such a wide-ranging set of interests, I suppose.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, well, like where Might as
did
well
it
start
all
where
come
the
from?
fuck
Yeah.
where are you from?
Yeah, okay.
Like where are you from? Why
Why do I do what I do?
why do you music?
Yeah, why do I music? Okay, well, I guess I music because I don't think there's any other choice at this point to do anything but music. But I, it was cruel in a way. And if my parents would never, not to say that they would never listen to your podcast because fuck podcasts or something. I'm sorry, I should probably also keep swearing to a minimum.
I don't know.
Okay,
It's fine with me.
All right, check. Explicit content, of course. But when I was around 10, I suppose, I got to choose one after school thing to do. And it was like, if that didn't work, then I guess I was never going to have an after school activity. So like I chose music and then I had to stick with music. So, but it wasn't a torture device I was really, really drawn to it. But I guess that was just sort of the beginning part of it. We had a high school music theory class that was offered, and one of our first projects was to write a fugue, which seems like such a terribly thorny task to ask like a 16-year-old to try to like, we're not actually going to go over any rules of counterpoint, but like just go ahead and try your hand at counterpoint real quick.
Write a fugue, which has been held up as the pinnacle. Why am I blanking on the word I'm looking for? The pinnacle of like of form.
Yes, absolutely.
Of form in Western music. Just go for it. Even the form that people even in the 20th century and 21st century haven't gotten rid of yet.
Of course, yeah. It's a very fun puzzle to try to figure out, because the further you get in, the worse that you realize the mistakes that you made like previous. You're like, okay, well, so my melody is either horribly boring and now I've just like, spawned terrible counterpoint from it, or regardless, I ended up writing a fugue. It was terrible because you're not allowed to write a good first fugue on your go on the first go. And so I ended up staying after school a whole bunch to like write more fugues, because I was not like, which is such a strange thing for a 16-year-old to do. Like, instead of like sneaking out of the house, which I did later on and whatever, I was there like writing counterpoint and trying to approach counterpoint in different ways. Anyway, after like 3 fugues, I was like, okay, enough of fugues, let's move on to something different. And eventually I'd amassed a portfolio, and I always got really terrible performance anxiety. This will all tie in together at some point, cool. I swear.
I'm just like finding it funny that like you're basically starting with the hardest thing, and they're like, "Oh, I'm tired of writing this. Let's back up."
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was more like I just wanted to sort of experiment with other forms and trying to do something else with melody. And so, I wrote a bunch of theme and variations, things that sounded very evocative of video game music.
Of course.
I pretty much, it was like an extension of the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack as far as and early Sibelius sounds also contributed greatly to like the sound of that particular genre.
Yeah.
It's so good.
They've ruined it by having like accurate sounds now.
It's not as good. I'm going to say the really terrible, cheesy, synthy strings always hold a place in my heart. So I had amassed a portfolio, and eventually, because I had terrible performance anxiety, so I ended up, I was a flute player and then an oboist, which I normally don't tell people for good reason. It's a terrible instrument. I'm kidding. It's only partially terrible.
She's not kidding.
No, I'm not kidding at all, actually.
It's okay. You're allowed to have opinions.
Yeah, I know.
You're allowed to have strong opinions. It's fine. Like this is like the real shit.
Yeah, right. Just a couple drinks in. Yeah, the oboe is such a great. Yeah. So, oboe, terrible instrument. Anyway, I gave it up. But I had amassed a sort of small collection of pieces, and I went to Chico State for my undergraduate degree, and I was declared a history major, but I wanted, to get some scholarship money.
Chico State is like California.
Yeah,
Chico?
yeah, like the number one party school as ranked by Playboy in the 1970s or something. Oh. I had no sort of aspirations of being a music major, but I sort of slipped in my portfolio, and then hadn't heard from anyone, so I went to go collect my terrible belongings, because I didn't want them to be publicly shamed or put up on someone's wall and made fun of or whatever. But the director just didn't get back in touch with me because of his busy schedule, and they ended up admitting me into the program. So I was a history major for all of about 5 minutes. Anyway, so all this to say, like, music was sort of something that I had really sunk a lot of time and effort into. Sort of, yeah.
So maybe don't, like, put all this money into doing something else.
Yeah, I guess so. And what I was most interested in in regards to history is art history, and like the history of how music and art and the fine arts in general have an impact on what's going on politically. So it always had a sort of interest in music or performative arts anyway, my interest in history. At any rate, I ended up being a very big fish in a small pond very quickly, and after 2 years at Chico State, went over to Cal Arts, which was very much an extension of me as a performer. Like, I don't think I've felt more comfortable somewhere. And it's a Disney endowed school in Valencia, but it's nice because they have all of the performing arts all in one spot. And what they really do is they encourage interdisciplinary collaboration.
Right.
And it's a very much like not dissimilar from Brooklyn College, actually. Like, you kind of make what you want of your degree and your degree program. So knowing that it costs an arm, a leg, and another limb and other organs I didn't actually own, because holy mother of God, is that place expensive, I really did squeeze a lot of stuff out of that place. My sort of undergraduate thesis was this thing called alphabophobia, where something goes wrong every day in 26 movements. But it's a fear for every letter of the alphabet. In fact, David Whitwell has performed the naked trombone solo. D is for the fear of undressing in front of someone, which I swear, if that's the work I am well known for, I will roll around preemptively in my grave.
Well, here's the thing about
that.
Here's the thing about this piece, and David was my very first interview subject for this podcast, right?
Lovely.
We've been, we were, when we both were in school studying with Dave Taylor, even though we didn't go to the same school, we always had back-to-back lessons, so that's how we met, like, right?
Oh, wonderful.
But here's the thing about that specific piece. Like, a lot of people associate that piece with David more than they associate that piece with you.
Really?
Because when I
Okay.
talk, people, like, there's not that many people who don't know him, but the people who do are like, oh, that's the dude who did the naked thing.
Perfect.
Which is great, right? Like, so awesome. and I'm always, because, like, I always am like, there's more to it than that. There's, like, more fears involved than just, like, David's, like, naked.
You're right.
I mean, but hey, you just got to get more people to do it than just David.
I know.
Alex Tick, who just recently performed it.
Yes,
but he didn't go like the full Monty.
Well, because I've already been in great trouble for doing it full Monty style here at Brooklyn College, and I got dragged into an office at some point that was like, here's the thing, it's better to ask to be forgiven than to ask for permission. But what I end up doing is trying to do both, where I ask for permission and then denied permission, and then I go ahead and just do it anyway, which is not the way you should do that. You should just go for it without ever telling anyone about it first. So,
well, I mean, we've already given that probably more time than we should, considering that, like, that's not then necessarily the one thing you want to be known for. But I do want to come back to the concept.
Yeah, absolutely. So alphabophobia is supposed to integrate things like theater, animation, set design, costumes, dance, pretty much you name it, and it's in the piece. So I learned a lot of sort of exploring my artistic and performative interests while I was at Cal Arts, and that's where I started conducting. And conducting came out of complete necessity. I ended up writing works that were large enough and complicated enough to require a conductor. Believe it or not, they actually don't have anyone that's actually doing conducting study there. And it's very much a DIY, like, go ahead and try to get your hands, very experimental and very friendly towards experimenting with things. So,
and they have the facilities and the equipment to
Totally.
Yeah, 'cause they have the money.
Yeah. There's no shortage of money there, and there's no shortage of, because if CalArts hadn't had worked out, it's actually constructed to be a mental institution, like a psychiatric sort of ward. It's almost like a hospital in terms of how it's constructed, with the huge corridors. And anyway, you can find abandoned parts of the building very easily in which to like rehearse large groups. So I remember we had this piece called The Masochist Tango, which was for 2 dancers, a solo clarinetist, a string quintet, and 2 percussionists, and we ended up, finding a corner of the school to rehearse in.
So I mean, we're already getting into like pretty specifically like talking about like the kind of music that you write,
Right.
And that's great. That's I'm not like but like even among like modern music, like modern contemporary compositions, and like there's still a lot of stuff that's not all that experimental necessarily. Like it's
Sure.
experimental in certain ways.
Yeah.
But this is like the things that you're talking about, like even title wise and concept wise, are like pretty janky.
Yeah.
Like
they
to
do.
use the technical term.
Sure, yeah.
Like what like did you immediately jump to like that kind of out of the box is such an in the box term, like
Yeah, I hear
just
ya.
like, but just like kind of like grabbing after concepts that might not like be ones that people like look at every day if they're composing or performing. Like not all musicians are looking for that type of experimentalism in what they want to play.
Sure.
And audiences aren't always looking, but this is a very specific thing, and there is an audience, a really artistic audience for it.
Sure.
Like, why did you? Like,
Why did I gravitate
You're
to-
already, this isn't very far into your like compositional life
I guess
cycle
suppose so, yeah.
per se.
Yeah.
Like, and you're still at school, and you're like kind of like grabbing for these weird kind of. I don't mean weird in a pejorative sense, but just like weird things.
Yeah. Like
Stranger things.
like the supernatural, the macabre, the larger than life, the surreal. I mean, I think these are things that I honestly was always really attracted to. Even living in California, like I always wore much too much black in order to really fit in there. I didn't really go through a goth phase, even though people kind of look at me and they're like, you look kind of steampunk or kind of like goth.
Sure.
And that kind of, I mean, how I carry myself now and what I look like and the weird things I wear is very much an extension of the music I create. Like it's a whole package sort of thing. Even the tattoos that I have on me are very much a part of like my public persona. And
then that's the only reason for them. You just
I mean,
it's
no.
just for other people to see. I'm just kidding.
No. There's they're cool, I guess. But they all have to do with like musical pieces that I've actually written. They all have some sort of musical meaning to them.
Okay.
Going on a slight tangent, I think that tattooing is a very interesting time in which you can kind of catalog yourself, sort of like growing or the rings on a tree stump, for example. And so you have a moment to sort of catalog who you are, what you're doing, and what all constitutes your being at that place and time when you're experiencing pain. And so being able to like recall your individual selves via these pictures that you essentially carry around is one of the bigger reasons why I get tattooed. Eventually I'll run out of space, and it's coming to an end, but it is. I want to be done at some point and just sort of maybe
There's
enjoy it.
off-limits
Yeah.
spots.
Like this arm will never be done, but this one is completely finished as of this point. But I mean, I was always, even when I was writing these fugues that I'm talking about, I never wrote it in a major key. Like I've never been attracted to things that are like very particularly happy. I am interested in the idea of things that are like overly happy to a point of like disgusting saturation though, but testing the extremes of the emotional spectrum. It's always, but that's my interest in theater, where in order for theater to really be a thing, you need to present life not at 100% on stage, but something like 250% in order for it to be perceived in the back row as something that's even like a quarter of what you're trying to present on stage.
So this is, I mean, these are all a lot of things that, because of where you were, like you were allowed, like what you were saying, you were allowed the kind of freedom to kind of go in these weird directions. Whereas, I mean, if you had gone to the same alma mater that I went to, probably like it would have been much more difficult.
Sure.
So, like, what I was going somewhere with that, and I just like went off the rails. It's really good. This happens to me a lot.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. So, like, when did you kind of leave that little safe space per se, and like move to a space that was less
space.
so.
Okay. So I did 3 semesters at Cal Arts, which is a very short time considering everything that I ended up doing there. I did a semester abroad in England, and there's nothing that will make you feel more uncomfortable than being somewhere that you haven't been. I mean, sure, the same language is spoken in England, and that's all great. Yes. I remember getting on the phone with my flatmate and not understanding a word she had said. I was like, well, I might as well be in France right now. But and I was in the countryside. I wasn't a part of like a major metropolitan area anymore. I didn't have nearly as many performers at my, I guess, beck and call, not to really say that, but I didn't have as many artists around to sort of collaborate with. So it was sort of a small incubation period in terms of, writing things still within the lines of what I would otherwise have done at Cal Arts, but with the forethought of like, okay, I'm going to be in New York next, and that's where I want to launch all these new sort of projects that I'm working on. So I mean, that period of where I felt really in my safe space was maybe a year and a half, followed by half a year of incredible discomfort being abroad. Really great stories. I wouldn't have taken, there was some really terrible decisions that were made during that time, and they were so good. I'm really glad I made all of those terrible decisions. You learn a lot about yourself when you're out of your comfort zone. I had the option of continuing on with my master's studies there. I also had the option of coming back to Cal Arts. They had accepted me again, and I was like, that'd be great, but I knew that I had already gotten done what I really wanted to get done there in my 3 semesters. And I've always known I wanted to go to New York, so I got into Brooklyn College and just carried on every bit of my weirdness here, and just shamelessly different. I mean, I know even upon like the orientation meeting where I met some of my performers who are still working with me to this day, which is crazy to think about. Being like, my flute player, Lindsay, one of the flute players who works in the ensemble, Lindsay, remember seeing like my tattooed stockings and being like, I need to know that chick. I need to know the weirdo that has the weird leg tattoos and the jet black hair and the red lipstick or whatever. I feel naked without it right now, but yeah, so and just embracing that the second I got here, because I mean, New York is famous for making everyone feel uncomfortable, or comfortable in the fact that you don't need to belong to really anything in order to belong here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it seems like no matter how well you fit in, that like people never, people who aren't from here don't really seem to fit in, like maybe in their own minds.
Sure.
And even the people who live here get moved around and forced around too.
Totally.
It's weird. Anyway, but.
I just did a little bit of, I had heard a woodwind quintet of mine performed in Italy, and I'm shamelessly me all of the time. I didn't, even though I was in the countryside where I didn't even think about the idea of paved roads, I brought all of my ridiculous, like, high-heeled footwear and like strange crinoline and like bloomers and like stuff from the 1890s with me. And I forget that here, like, no one really cares what you look like, but that even other places in the United States, like if I, go down south for a residency or something like that, it's very quick.
You wouldn't even have to go that far. You could go to South Jersey.
Probably.
And it would be weird.
It would, yeah.
Like, I mean, like, I'm not like trying to like defend the South or anything, but New York is like a very special, it's a very unique place in that way that like you can just like you could wear a garbage bag and it would just like you'd barely get a glance.
Totally.
And unless you like smelled bad, in that case, people would like glance at you and then move away.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's more about like how you smell. That's brilliant.
It's more
like,
about how
in
you
New
smell.
York, it's more about how you smell than how you look.
Oh gosh, in the summer it's so difficult. Yeah, I know.
Anyway, so you came to New York.
Yes, I came.
All of that to say you came to New York.
All this to say, yes, I came to New York, and I feel like this is my home, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't feel like California's a home anymore. I don't feel like, I mean, Cal Arts might be the one exception of where I might feel like at home, but I feel at home here. I never want to leave. I want to die in this city. It makes me really upset when people get like, I don't know if I can stay in New York. I'm like, ugh, stop crying, stop sniveling about it.
So when you leaving?
Yeah, like, so get out of here. So get out. And it's almost, it comes off as aggressive and terrible, but I have this strange affinity for this city because it embraces all of the different weird off the beaten path stuff that I love to embrace, from the way I look to the kind of art I create. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's in a weird way, it's like it's good and bad. Like if you want to do like really, really weird things or in like off track, strange, unique things musically or in a theater aspect or in melding those two, like you can pretty much do it as much as you want. Like there's plenty of places for it. The flip side of that being that you're never going to be the only one doing it. So it's like it's there's a lot more that goes into like making people notice it. So say you're in Milwaukee and you're doing that kind of thing. It might be a little more difficult to find venues and but you're one of like maybe two people doing it, if not the only person doing it. Like you know what I mean? It's and like so in addition to like you can never rest for a second on like what you've already done, because next week the dude, one of like 25 people who also does something maybe not that similar, but
right,
they're going to be in that same probably in like one of the same several venues and be like, well, now it's my turn.
Right.
You got to fight for that shit. Fight for your turf.
Yeah, you do. I don't find, it's not that it's not competitive here, but I really don't want to say like, oh, I'm such a unique little snowflake or whatever, but I don't really think, I don't see anyone kind of trying to do exactly what I'm doing, and I feel.
And I don't necessarily, and I didn't mean to.
How dare you? Right? Keep talking.
They're because the thing is like that's absolutely the case, right? You know, like, but there is also the way people perceive things in the same category.
Of
course,
what I mean?
Like,
yes.
Like, so if I'm scrolling, say I'm scrolling through Facebook, and I see like, well, this group and this group and this group and this artist, they don't do the same thing.
Totally.
Probably.
Right.
I'm gonna say 99 times out of 100 they don't do the same thing. But the perception is that they're in the same category.
Yeah,
you know?
the same. They're working in the same genre, whether it's just be different, sort of. Yeah.
And they might not be even working in the same genre, but they, you know, if they use the same same musicians or the same venues or the same like even just have like a similar look to the ensemble. It doesn't even have to be like, it can be like completely different. You know, because it's such a hassle to like actually like click and listen. And blah, blah,
Of course.
but like so, you know, you come to New York and you obviously you're still like doing the school thing, but like unlike other places, there's much more opportunity if you are willing to put in the work to really start your career far before you get a diploma, especially in if you're doing grad work.
Yep.
You know, how did you kind of like start to build out like that? I mean,
Okay, yeah. I mean, so the foundation of conducting a bunch of my work has now led to conducting many other people's works, from being a guest conductor for different ensembles. I've had
you work with a lot of different ensembles now.
Yes. But I think that there's just a smaller pool of conductors around. I mean, like, David Bloom, although he like runs contemporaneous, he definitely is like guest conducting some other things. And the trick is, I think specifically doing conducting stuff is not, don't say no. And I know that's a rule that it's a flexible rule. But I didn't say no for a lot of projects just to get my hands on either pieces of the standard repertoire, so that I could just sort of, you know, from The Soldier's Tale to like doing Messiaen's Exotic Birds to, oh my gosh, I mean, to Schoenberg's Chamber Symphony, I mean, what have you, to doing new people's works. Like I'm doing Face the Music now. I'm running their youth orchestra, which is exhausting, but it's good. It's great to use your skills in a variety of different manners.
Well, and also it's having a familiarity and ability to work with specifically like music from 1935.
Yeah.
Like excluding like late romantic stuff, like, you know, Shostakovich and Rachmaninoff to some extent. Like,
Sure.
I'm talking, you know, like hard 20th century music, like you mentioned, Stravinsky, Messiaen. There's other guys that I'm blanking on, but like and going into like very more experimental and dealing with things that aren't necessarily going to have patterns or whatever, like going into that, it's very specific. And, you know, there's always only going to be a handful of people who I like even conceptually are comfortable with working on that, working in that kind of a way.
So I ended up, because I learning conducting, I mean, you're only as good as the pieces that you've mastered conducting. It's a weird thing to say. So I ended up, I remember doing Lucas Foss's piece, Time Cycle, which is awesome. Not for full orchestra, the smaller chamber piece, the sort of Pierrot version of it. But it definitely requires a conductor, unless you're Lucas Foss also playing the piano and the celeste and conducting at the same time. But whatever, that's not me. I remember just not doing really great at it because it has tons of metric modulations in it and changes meter all the time. And in order for me to wrap my brain around doing this better, I actually wrote pieces that tested me as a conductor. So like the Yellow Wallpaper and opera we just did, I was having a real hard time going back and forth between asymmetrical reoccurring meters and like either consistent patterns or inconsistent ones. So as a composer, I actually did that in the piece so that I could cut my teeth on something and make myself better. I guess it was, again, mostly just to be a better conductor, but I think probably constraints breed creativity. So I think it was helpful in the compositional aspect of things as well. I'm also really driven to this idea of orchestration and writing for people versus instruments. And I think that's informed a lot of the writing that I've been doing. It also informs how I conduct things and what I conduct specifically. So I love conducting new works because usually I'm invited as a voice to give commentary on things. Like, and you learn the best by making endless numbers of mistakes, right? Oh shit, I shouldn't have voiced the clarinet over the flute in this one part, or maybe I should have done exactly that, and whatever it might be. But being able to have a composer there, and either to him or her being like, hey, like, watch what happens when we like switch these things, and being comfortable with being like, hey, just so you know, like, this is an option that's out there. But I think that's, I mean, so letting these ideas all bleed together and sort of extending my, I'm not just a composer, but like composer, conductor, orchestrator, teacher sort of thing that ends up making a lot of probably unnecessary commentary written during the process. But I mean, that's what I live for now, I think. I think that's what I live for. Yeah. I think. Or to pay rent in New York. It's one of the two.
That's what we all live for.
It's as the end of the month draws near, that is what I live for currently, right?
But there's something so romantic about being a starving artist.
There is so much romance involved in that.
Or sure, at least there is when you read about it and
of course,
and listen to old Bob Dylan records.
You're coughing, dying of consumption, barely able to make rent. It's cold. It's endless winter.
Oh always. Man, you really are 1890s.
I am.
Have you seen the show The Nick? It's on Showtime. It's like set at it's called the Knickerbocker Hospital.
Oh no.
And it's like set in like 1912 New York.
I love it.
It's like based on a real hospital that was up in Harlem back in the turn of the century, but they move it like further downtown kind of deal.
Sweet.
But it's like, if you like Clive Owen, it's
I'll have to check it out.
it's not Showtime. Cinemax actually.
Really?
Which like Cinemax has some
kind of like porn.
It's not
right.
like
it's
Cinemax has like started
not
like making
anymore.
some right. No, they've actually like it's like gory, like there's always like, because it's Cinemax, there's always going to be like a shit ton of blood and boobs.
Bah.
But also like they've actually started making good TV.
Nice. All right. I mean, the competition is there now. I mean, whatever.
Well, and HBO owns Cinemax, so like sometimes certain things don't fit on HBO.
That makes sense.
And even though like this is a Steven Soderbergh directed television series,
right,
that the tone doesn't fit for HBO, so like let's put it on Cinemax.
Perfect.
And it's the best thing they've ever made.
Love it.
Anyway,
it's cool. I've just finished Stranger Things or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So I need something else. So this is perfect. It's so good.
It is. I haven't finished it yet.
Okay, good.
I think I've watched the first 5.
I've got one more.
5 or 6.
There's only 8.
Like, yeah, I think I've watched 5.
That's great.
Yeah, I do love my prestige weird television.
I like Winona Ryder is kind of my spirit animal.
Really?
I think she's amazing.
What did you like mainline Heathers like 14,000 times or?
No,
What was the other she was in Beetlejuice, right?
Beetlejuice, absolutely. No. Yeah, she was. That's her.
I'm thinking Edward Scissorhands then.
Also that.
Right.
She's in that too.
Okay, yeah. Like, but she was like that weird.
She's always like the weird outcast, and she's like shamelessly her in every film.
I've never actually seen Beetlejuice.
Really?
Yeah.
What? Michael Keaton? What? It's so good. It's really good.
He looks gross though.
It's disgusting, but you should watch it. But I don't know. She's kind of the black sheep of, I don't know, the acting world in a way.
Yeah, I'm really happy about this like career resurgence that she's having.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of it.
Yeah.
I was more of a person who was into Heathers and Reality Bites than I was into like the like more Tim Burton-y stuff. But
I mean, Tim Burton is. So for when people first meet me at a party or whatever, and they
like assume that Tim Burton's your favorite person ever.
Probably.
Are they wrong?
No, not necessarily. The one thing that I don't like about Tim Burton is I think he. God, let Tim Burton never listen to this. I think he's a little bit of a one-trick pony. He does the same thing a lot, all the time, forever. Okay, but like how...
Sure.
Yeah, but like that's... I just feel like the net he casts every time he like throws his net out it just continues getting sort of smaller and smaller and smaller in terms of like the safety of what he wants to kind of do. And I think his younger spirit was a little bit more ambitious, and I hope.
Well, and there wasn't a whole backlog of previous and better Tim Burton movies that he was
Sure.
always being compared to.
Of course, yeah.
So
I know that's rough, right? It's rough, but definitely like at a party, I'm always like, my music is somewhat resembling, like a film score to a Tim Burton film.
So
Therefore,
Danny Elfman.
Danny Elfman, yeah, who's someone like. Yeah, I know someone who knows him. I would love to meet him at some point. I think we would hit it off, maybe. But
I haven't. I've been out on Danny Elfman since like Spider-Man 2,
did he really write the music to Spider-Man 2?
and the first one.
Boo.
But
Not,
like
not the best stuff.
well, it's not terrible.
No.
But yeah, it's funny though. There's a Mahler symphony that sounds exactly like the themes, like his theme from Batman. I can't remember which one it is.
Oh, the original?
No, not Mahler. Bruckner.
Really?
There's a Bruckner symphony where
What?
it's like.
I probably
let's
fell
see.
asleep before he got there. Whoopsies. Sorry, Bruckner.
I'm not a fan
All
of it,
right.
but like there's a part where it's like the theme from Batman, and it's like very very similar. And I'm like, oh,
Interesting,
this
right?
is amazing. Anyway,
Sorry.
got off
This is
track.
what will happen and much like conversation is an extent of who I am too, like taking the weird tangents and stuff.
well, no, it's cool. Like that's why I don't. That's part of the reason I
Smoke
don't.
mirrors.
It's part of the reason I don't come prepared with questions, like specific questions. I don't necessarily like. I mean, everyone's got a backstory, and
Sure.
most people's backstories are interesting to me, but also like, I don't want to sound like Meet the Composer. Like I'm never gonna win awards like Meet the Composer did, but
Don't say
also
that.
chances are like mine's more interesting. Sorry, I'd love to talk to the people from Alarm Will Sound. So like I don't want to
Right.
shit on what's her face who hosts Meet the Composer.
Right, yeah.
Anyway,
Things that are edited out.
I'll probably edit that part out. Yeah, but well, you bring up an interesting point about like you talking about like being at parties and people being like, well, you must like Tim Burton or
Yeah.
like, so like yeah, sure, you do have a specific physical look.
Mm-hmm. Is this where you like describe me in great detail to
No,
your
there's
listeners?
there'll be a video.
Oh,
There will be video.
all
Remember?
right, that's fine.
Like, and if you really are curious, okay, like so she's like got really dark black hair and like
Yeah,
tattoos and
yeah, I
like a
do.
vest and like plaid and like ties
Ties.
and like if you've ever seen Bioshock, if you've ever played Bioshock Infinite, she looks like a character from that. I don't
Sweet.
know.
Someone says I look like Wild Style from the Lego movie. But
a little bit,
thank
a little
you.
bit, but no pink streak.
No pink streak. Yep. Also, I don't look like a Lego, so this is a disadvantage.
That could go in a bad direction. No, but like you know, like you have a unique look, and that not only are you not ashamed of, but you own pretty definitively, and you seem willing to talk about openly, right?
Yeah.
Well, well, some people are just kind of like, I do what I do. I don't care. Don't talk to me about it.
Yeah.
But. And we're talking. And this is in a world, even among like more experimental contemporary classical musicians, that's still like not something you see very often, right?
Right.
It's even among. We're dealing with a musical culture where it's even with like weird new music, the preferred outfit is all black.
Yep.
And nothing else.
Right.
We're talking about, even if we're talking about like a new Nico Muhly piece or a new John Luther Adams or a new whatever, it's going to be in a very like specific setup. Like Nico Muhly is supposedly one of the voices of this generation of composers.
Okay.
But his stuff is being performed by the Met, which is like, not this is like, it sounds like I'm like shitting on his music and, like his success. And like, that's absolutely not the case. He deserves whatever he gets, whatever. But the Met is the company that does Don Giovanni 14 times a year.
Ah.
Not that there's anything wrong. Like I keep like qualifying what I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with Don Giovanni. There's nothing wrong with doing Don Giovanni. But the point I'm making is, even like in this culture of like new music and all this stuff, it's still a very kind of buttoned up type of deal.
Yeah.
I'm gonna shave that down because I just went on for far too long to make my point. But like, how, what does your specific physical appearance? How does that affect how have you noticed people like treating you differently necessarily, or like where you've felt that you've had to struggle in a different way because of like, I don't know.
Well,
I'm struggling with how to like phrase this in a way that kind of encompasses what I'm thinking. But
what I think what's interesting about what you're saying right now, the question that you haven't even quite gotten to yet, which is fine, is you haven't asked how me being a woman affects, right? Which is the question I encounter 9.9 times out of 10.
That's not the question I'm interested in, actually.
Right. Thank you for not being interested.
That's the one. Like I've talked with people about that, right. And that's like that is an interesting question in the confines of like particularly in the confines of the brass community. But I've that question at this point in history gets asked a lot.
Yeah.
And gets over asked.
Yeah.
As if that's the only thing that you can have an opinion on.
Right.
Which is a weird way of like flipping it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh well, what's it like being a woman? Well, it's like I have other things to say about other than anyway. Point is like that's not what I'm interested in. I'm just interested in like just like an completely like unusual, just the look in general. Like I've like spun myself so many times around that I'm like
I interrupted you.
Out of it. Yeah. No, it's just in the let me try to rephrase, like bring this back to in a musical culture where everyone is like buttoned up and exceptionally like super serious about like the look conformity, look conformity, and sometimes and a lot of times musical conformity as well. You look different, you dress different, you act different, and like what are the challenges that you face in doing with that? I mean, if people are like accepting all the time, that's cool too.
They're not. Trust, weirdly, is the first. So running an ensemble, I feel like I'm better. Okay, if being a conductor in front of a group is like dating the whole group all at once, which sounds really
Gross.
Creepy. I do better on like the second or third date with the ensemble. Sometimes making my first impression is a little difficult. It's where I end up being the most nervous because people tend to make a judgment of you based on the first 5 minutes in front of the group, which is it depends of the personality and makeup of the group. So, but what I end up selling people on, I think first and foremost is that I can read you, whoever you are, the ensemble, fairly well. And I don't mean this to come off as threatening or someone who hasn't worked with me to like listen to this and be like, I'm not going to be known by her or whatever. But being able to elicit the best kind of sound from people, I mean, that's my goal as a conductor, and that's not the goal of every conductor at all. Like not even by a long shot is it the goal of every conductor. In fact, I don't actually understand what some of the goals of conductors are. It's like a Machiavellian sort of like reign of terror situation with like Robespierre in the background or whatever.
I think the thing I most often run into is more of a, can we just get through this without falling apart?
Yeah, I mean that's good, but like when we can actually make music, and I'm like, how can I get you to achieve your best sound? Like, how do I give criticism in the most way that's going to be the most constructive to you? It's like having a large party and being like the ultimate hostess and being able to read all of your guests. And more than that, like my ensemble is a very special, like extra exclusive party where I've curated all the people that I think get along the best together. And they're all like-minded people who are, like me, interested in putting in the work. And I actually don't think I'm talented at all at music, which is absolutely bizarre. Maybe. I don't know. I think I've gotten far enough to be like, it's just going to be the thing that I work at. But I don't have natural talent at this freaking thing like some other people do. That's like, oh, that this person's God's gift to this instrument. I don't have that. I actually have to work endlessly hard at understanding things like with scores and what have you. But like I'm there willing to put that kind of time and effort in, and I think people see that, react positively to it, and then end up looking past my gender or how I look or whatever when they realize, oh, she actually has something somewhat intelligent to say. But beyond that, also sometimes not just like the textbook connections that you would, oh, and then we're entering like this part of the recapitulation section. So like the counterpoint needs to be really clear. Everyone needs to, whatever that comment might be, but doing something more interesting, like, and again, that approach comes from my composition mind. Like, oh, do you see that like this motif is being, developed in this way here, and like getting them to put the pieces together as an ensemble. And also, of course, making it a more democratic process and that's something that's like a second date or third date sort of thing anyway. Being like, hey, it's not a dictatorship. This is a democracy of sorts. And like I want to hear from you. And so making people comfortable with that switch of a dialogue. I don't know if I've answered your question, but it comes with skepticism.
No, I mean, well, you're talking about like establishing trust, which is the kind of thing that's important with every ensemble, no matter, it's kind of like me asking you like that. Me asking you this, asking you about this is kind of like a surface level question, when really the point is that like establishing trust is the most important thing, no matter what here is, what's in, like what face you're giving to an ensemble. I mean, so I'm not saying it's like I guess the problem is less with your answer and more with my question.
Well, so the process is only as amazing as everyone will allow it to be. So there are definitely people that I work amazing with, even guest conducting wise. There are other people that like, if you were to put me in front of the New York Phil and like have me conduct, I don't think they would react as positively to me, not because of my maybe lack of experience or whatever. I think just my unconventional nature of how I like to run rehearsals, how I like, I got so burnt out on performance. I think rehearsals they don't need to be like, okay, let's drill this. Like they really need to be, it needs to be about making the music to some extent. And, there's groups that just they don't have that kind of time or attention in that direction. And I think personally, I think that's freaking stupid, but that's not my place to really say, though, I guess. Except for it is.
It is if you say it is.
Right?
I mean, like...
But that's, it's one of the reasons why I have a blast conducting my ensemble, of course. I love guest conducting people that I don't know because it puts my skills to the test immediately. Like, hey, let's see you read this room without knowing anyone who's in any of the chairs right now. Let's just see how you do. It's almost like a blind tasting or something like that. I got so many weird metaphors up in this. And then my youth orchestra, they're really experimental and very accepting of all sorts of stuff. They also don't have the foundation to like do regular things with, where, I think the thing that I say the most often is my hands are up. Your instrument should be up right now. My hands are up. That still happens in my older, no, I'm just kidding. But they also haven't seen a woman conduct ever as well, which is, they haven't been around for all that long. Some of them are young as like 6, 7, 8. I don't feel like I don't feel like I really encounter so many gender things now, though. It's more about just continuing to own who I am on the podium.
Yeah, and it's gonna be, at this point, it's pretty rare for someone to be like overtly, like, especially in New York, it's less and less. When you're the face of an organization, like it's less and less common for them to be overt about how they handle genders, and more like underhanded and just like not underhanded. I mean, anyway. It's less overt and more like, in some ways,
guarded
more insidious, but
but
not as like, because no one wants to be sued.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
So you work with a lot of different ensembles, but you do have the Curiosity Cabinet is like your baby.
Yep.
That's your thing.
It is.
Your thing.
My freakish Frankenstein child. Yes.
Awesome.
I love it. It sounds
That
appropriate.
sounds terrifying.
I love,
Is it sometimes terrifying?
yeah. I mean, it's a business. It's like a whole other set of legal documents and binding materials. So we're officially a 501c3, which comes with just like doing a whole other set of taxes, which just makes me feel like a little bit more adult than I already did before. Yeah.
Because that's one thing that every kid wants to do is more taxes.
I know, right? It's the sort of the saddest money I spend every year is on my CPA. I actually do it with great joy because I wouldn't want to have to do that stuff by myself anymore. But yeah, the Curiosity Cabinet is my Frankenstein child. I've recently given part custody of that Frankenstein child to my partner in crime, Danny Felsenfeld, and we became very fast friends, and we're sort of thick as thieves by this point.
And he's also a composer.
He's
right?
also a composer. He dabbles in conducting again from that sort of practical standpoint, but he's interested in some strange intersections of what I'm interested in as a composer, but very much the ensemble is an extension kind of what I'm interested in as well. And other composers have not where their whole compositional output is dedicated to like just surveying the macabre, the fantastical, the supernatural, the silent films, the like obscured narratives, the nonlinear narratives, the like opera, or like where different arts intersect, but they have some pieces within their catalog. So like I think I have enough programming to possibly make 12 awesome Halloween concerts by this point. But like Halloween is probably the ensemble's most loved holiday. I mean, I think what distinguishes us from any other ensemble is, even if we're putting on a program of just concert music to be enjoyed, I always want to weave a kind of narrative in it, where if we're going to be programming pieces that are all within one kind of theme, I'll usually pre-record program notes to actually interweave the pieces together so that it's, that you're experiencing the concert like in gestalt kind of form, like where it's a cohesive whole rather than a bunch of like separate kind of pieces. Because truly, and I'm sorry to every ensemble who does this, I cannot tell you how bored I am of just sitting there and being like, okay, here's one piece. Okay, here's another piece.
Yeah, I'm like the worst concert goer.
Yeah.
And which is funny because like I'm like often talking to people and they're talking about concerts that they have coming up, and I go to concerts and I'm just like, I'm always the guy who's like, I always feel like I can't just like sit and watch a whole concert. I have to be, if there's not like something actively happening.
Yeah.
Like if there's not, I mean, these are live performances. If I want to hear like a collection of admittedly excellent performances of these 5 pieces, I can put together a playlist on
Right.
Spotify, and
Yep.
that's fine. Which is not to say that people should stop performing these pieces, but
Yeah.
I think that the art of planning concert planning and like programming and figuring like it falls by the wayside because it's so much about we like these pieces, and that's fine, but like do more than just that. Like I'm not saying you, and like sometimes I'm just like, you don't have to necessarily change the program, like maybe, but
Right.
just like change how you like
Approach it.
present
Yeah.
the program.
Yeah.
Like I think I go often too far in saying like, don't play these pieces. Like no, whatever, it's your ensemble, play these pieces, but
Yeah.
figure out like if 90% of your audience has heard these pieces like 25 times before, well, what the fuck? Why the fuck should they listen to you? Like,
Right.
give me a reason.
Totally.
I want a reason.
Yeah. I feel like, oh gosh, it's just, it's the difference between putting together an album versus releasing a single. I feel like some of these concerts that we have are just like a mixtape of like the best singles that we could possibly come out with, but like actually coming up with an awesome, not just, obviously the metaphor kind of breaks down because an album is just one artist, and I'm not really conveying or saying that like you should only represent one artist on a single concert, which we do a lot of my music, but those pieces are built like that. Like we just did this Night Like Velvet in 12 Letters thing, which uses the poetry of Sylvia Plath and Ted Hughes in a non-narrative dialogue between the two of them that's displaced in time and space, and there's like a burlesque aerialist and a singer, and so like any sort of fragments of the story you are making up. It's not like I haven't dictated like this is who you should pay attention to, this is what you should like. It's up to you to like, much like Einstein on the, which I love Einstein on the Beach as like a sort of, but you decide how the pieces all fall together and what kind of narrative you want to weave. But the element of narrative, even if it's disjunct, is absolutely there. And I think programming concerts to have that kind of thoughtfulness is really important. And so, yeah, but everything sort of still falls with this within this umbrella of, you know, I think our mission, which if you read our 501c3 legal documents, is just to like, it's a much more boring mission than I think we have on our website, for example. But you know, it's to
the one on the 501c3 is for the government,
right?
Like
right,
the
right,
one on
yeah.
the website is for like free spirits.
Yes, exactly. Yes, all of those lovely
Attract
things.
those freewheeling sprites.
But
To yourself.
But I think all of the members of the ensemble are really they think similarly, and just finding those like-minded people to do these weird things with, and they're always coming with ideas for me, which is, I mean, really, the ensemble might have been mine at some point, but I have, you know, like a dying person, it's been like the life force flows out of me or whatever. Like people have like, they've not had to, but have decided to invest so much more in the group because there's that kind of open opportunity to, which makes it a totally different animal than it was maybe 5 years ago.
Right.
But they very much, they're like, oh, they get a very strong sense of like who I am, what I like to do, what we would find interesting, and like we'll never run out of things to program. I'm absolutely positive of it. Yeah. I don't know. It's good though.
Well, I mean, so in a, you know, you say you're performing a lot of your music.
Yeah,
right?
tons. Less now, but still a lot.
But like, what, you know, if it's not entirely your music, let's say, what would you say, like 80% still yours, 75%,
No.
or much less?
Less. I would
Okay.
say this season maybe was like 60% my music. This upcoming season might be more like 40.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
we're moving out of that area.
So I mean, we've spent like the better part of the last hour kind of like building, you know, I think we've done a pretty good job of like building like a kind of a portrait of like these interests and like what the kind of things that make you up as a music make you up as a musician. That turn of phrase sounds so awkward.
Make up the parts of you being a musician. I don't know. Let's add more words to it.
Yeah, like this is more like, but they kind of sum you up in some way, like in a
Right.
very broad way as a musician. So, and these are very specific kind of tastes that you bring to the table. Very specific. And so how do you, when you're, you know, now that you've started to like phase out some of like what you do for this ensemble, like how do you, what are you bringing in to replace that? Like who and what, like how does that, you know, how do you take from other people and like meld it into, you know, the vision for this ensemble that you started, and like while it's, you know, belongs to everyone in some way, but like how what do you look for in bringing in other parts to complete the whole? There we go.
Okay. Well, so there are some composers within the group. One of our bassists ends up composing, Evan Runyon. I just actually talked to him about maybe writing a new piece for the group. But people I've either cultivated a relationship with or know the ensemble, because I think I don't want people to just write for our instrumentation. It fluctuates all the time anyway. I want people to write pieces very specifically for us, knowing what we do best.
Okay.
Like, you know, that we have, you know, David Whitwell on trombone, and that he's, you know, the master of doing strange things to his instrument, from like the duck saxophone mouthpiece thing to like so
Well, if you're listening to this, I was rolling my eyes.
yeah,
at your
heavily.
ridiculousness.
Like I lost the whole iris part of the eye in the eye roll. But then having people come in and write pieces for a group, because there are a bunch of performer composers who end up like being in as subs or something like that. Paul Caracas, who's amazing. I love what he does. I've had the pleasure of having him on piano in the ensemble. We've had real heart-to-hearts about like, hey, like I really want you to write something for the, and he was like, yeah, you guys get me really excited about the possibilities of what you could do, because it's not so much about, because I ask everyone to like engage in from either dressing up, moving on stage, speaking text to, and I do a bunch of stuff too, from like play small hand percussion instruments to being a narrator while also conducting. But also, I mean, Barbara Hannigan, oh my God, the soprano who also, I want to be her. I mean, if there's someone that like I would rather trade lives, they might be her. I'm never going to be a singer like she is, but to own that sort of performing while also conducting kind of thing, to also think of me as a performer, and like that suddenly starts to open up composers' minds to a bunch of different opportunities. So we always look for something that has a kind of theatrical component to it, whether it be something that's more subdued, a program that is with the actual, you know, in the program notes of in the program that accompanies a piece, or something that's more overt, you know, narration during a piece, or a silent film component. But we look for all of these things as very much an extension of things that we've programmed in the past, things that the ensemble's interested in, things that I think people are also interested in seeing, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I mean, I hope to get more people to write, like I said, specifically for us, and not just a group of instruments in the abstract, and really starting that dialogue off, not to say that these composers that are coming in don't know how to write pieces right off the bat, but making it a conversation between the composer and the performers that are playing the piece, and being that a weird like third party member to like sort of negotiate that kind of correspondence between these kinds of people. I think that's where our strength is, and I want people to get excited about us as a group, not just who, you know, the makeup of our parts.
Well, that's an you know, I don't want to go too far afield at this point. We need, you know, don't want to take up too much more of your time, but if let's use an example, like because you're talking pretty specifically about having, you know, having people write for you, and like and it's more than just, like you said, it's more than just an instrumentation. It's kind of an idea, as well. Now, a group like Alarm Will Sound, right?
Yeah.
They're fantastic.
Yep.
They have all their, you know, they get money and shit. You know, and part of that is the pieces that are written for them have a second life.
Yes.
In being performed by other ensembles. Do you see that, like, right, you know, and that like just kind of feeds back into the new music monster that is that ensemble,
right?
You know, and of course they've been together for 15 years, something like 15 years now, and that's 15 plus, I want to say,
right?
I don't know. You know, so but that you know, they've been around for a while, so this is kind of like long term down the road type of stuff I'm talking about. But, you know, do you think about, like, since you're being so specific about like writing for this specific like idea of an ensemble, do you think about like, well, what about the second life of these pieces? Are you thinking like, no, these are only our pieces, or
no. I guess I'm also the master of repurposing items. This also is an extension of what I wear. Most of what I wear is never new. It's secondhand, altered, all sorts of stuff. But like, if I'm interested in someone's piece, I'm like, hey, I imagine that there could be choreographed silk movement, you know, with aerial dancers to this piece. Would you be open to us interpreting a work that's already standing in this sort of like non-traditional way? Or likewise, you know, talking to people write film scores where like the film option is it's not mandatory, where it can be a piece that's enjoyed without the film component. Maybe those are two very easy examples. But yeah, it does, it's not that I haven't thought about that. I guess I'm just so easy to not manipulate in different situations, but like if alarm will sound, like contacted me like, Whitney, we are interested in your stuff, we'd like to program one of your things, we can't do it with all the weird like extra circusy stuff. Like I would be like, okay, this is how you can do this piece, working around that but still kind of getting to the point of it. And I guess it's kind of a conversation that I try to have with composers who are approaching writing a work for the, if they're stuck in that sort of respect of like, okay, well, how do you actually make it have legs and walk around past just doing this and
past this one performance.
I think, as a composer, I think something having just one performance is complete and utter bullshit. Like you can't do stuff like that. Yeah, it is. And like I think our stress of always doing like world premieres and stuff is it's a real shot in the foot in a way. I don't think that's really what I think the pieces should be done again and again. Not to say that we need to revive like Shosti's, not to say that Shosti's not awesome, but like we don't need to.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. But like there's a way that this stuff works into the canon, and it's familiarity. And if we don't breed that familiarity at some point, we have no reason to be like, actually, we've done that too much.
and also sometimes you don't get it the first time.
Yes.
I mean, I don't mean from a performance standpoint. I mean from like it's not there yet. The piece isn't there yet.
Totally.
Or whether it's your music or someone else's music.
Yeah.
I was just listening to a thing that Malcolm Gladwell just put out this thing about specifically about pieces and songs that the first time they came out by a very popular artist, like it was like it wasn't there.
Right.
And it took someone else, or it took another 20 years or something else, someone else coming in and adding a twist to it to make it into that thing. So I mean, it's kind of like, that's kind of like me asking about that. It's kind of like it's almost like a theoretical question, I guess, in some ways, but I like thinking in theoreticalness.
It's something I should probably spend a little bit more time thinking of. It's something I take for granted because I'm like, well, I could just do this, like, I'm always one to look at an object and be like, I guess I don't suffer from functional fixedness in this way. Like I look at something and I'm like, it could be a house. It could be a, like whatever it is. And some people are looking at it like the stapler is a stapler. It's always going to be a stapler.
Well, I mean, it's always going to staple.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Or you could turn it into a paperweight.
I know.
Oh, do you have a stapler in front of you?
I do have a stapler in front of me. Obviously, my scope of interest is not all that wide, but yeah.
So, I mean, is the season for the Curiosity Cabinet starting up here in the next month? Or not next month, but like what, in this fall, I'm assuming?
September, and technically we never really finished. In fact, if we do a concert in August, we will have had a whole calendar year of concerts, which is a maddening idea. I cannot actually believe it. We just did a concert at Ensemble Mison's space. We did a new orchestration of my setting of The Strange Library, which is a novella by Haruki Murakami. We show the projections, which are very strange, and I narrate the story and do a little bit of conducting with an ensemble of about 5. But it's so we just did that, and I'm sure something will come up in August, so we'll have a full calendar season, which is again strange but very cool. But yeah, the season starts up, I guess, officially in September.
if it ends,
it's ongoing.
It might just keep going.
It's probably going to just keep going.
Cool.
Yeah.
Dope.
Awesome.
Nailed it.
Sweet.